Shakti Padsir 2.
Who am I? The sense of self is everything when it comes to spiritual realization, or spiritual, rather material unrealization. It's the difference between the transcendentalist and the mundaneist, mundaner. It's the difference between a religion which is based on something material and temporary and associated with the inertia and false nescience of matter, or something which is deep, inherent, and full of absolute reality. All religions, all spiritualists who created these religions, and spiritualists who evolved out of the people who created these religions, rely upon the connection between the self and the absolute. There is some kind of strange connection there between the self and the absolute. When we're born into this material world, we fall victim to the objects of the senses and confuse our identity with them because we're oriented externally through these physical senses, oriented externally, until we come into contact with revelation, until we come into contact with one who is connected internally, or with a religion that evolved from one who is connected internally. A human being is doomed to confusion and death and rebirth unless he gets the mercy of someone who has got the mercy of someone who has got the mercy of one who has gotten the mercy of the supreme someone himself, to understand who and what they are, and who and what God, the absolute reality, is. You think that you're the body or that you're the brain, but my body was born of the 4-5 material elements, and it will return to the material elements. And my brain is nothing but neural connections between the mind which observes the senses and the senses which observe the sense objects. Am I my subtle body, comprised of intelligence and mind? Well, it's closer. It tells me more about who I am than the objects of the senses, such as sight, touch, and smell. Because with the intellectual faculties, I can reason. I can reason that because this body is temporary, it's not me. And so with the mind, I can discern truth from untruth. And so it becomes closer to the absolute. In fact, Brahma is the same as intelligence. Brahma is the supreme object of knowledge, the supreme knower, and the supreme object of knowledge, in his form as the Parabrahman, Sri Krishna. When a yogi controls his mind, seeking for the self, in meditation, he uses it to focus on the vital breath. In, out. In, out. And in doing so, he aligns the energy flowing into body and mind, prana shakti and mana shakti. In aligning these two energies, the third shakti, kundalini shakti, arises. And the mind is focused on God for the first time. The mind is made to connect with the Shekinah for the first time. And the quality of the soul is actually exhibited, liberated from matter by the divine fires of the Lord, Maheshwar, and his consort Shiva, Shakti. The Kundalini Shakti is no different from Shiva. Shakti and Shiva are one. And so, when the divine essence of the human organism is released from within the center of the body, the center which divides the symmetric duality in half of the body, from that same Shushumna, the divine essence of the soul is brought to its purity. One experiences a space which is so vast and yet microscopic. One can't even feel the objects of the senses. One doesn't even feel the body. One feels the soul, the spirit. At that moment, one knows God. One experiences deeply the quality of the Lord in his spiritual attributes. The Sufis call this being filled with the names of God. And then one becomes devotion itself, merged into the ocean of his attributes. You are like a reflecting mirror, shining the divine attributes of the Lord upon itself, increasing the ocean of infinite ecstasy. At that time, where is the little me attached to the body, to the senses? Where is the little me? I look around and I can't find him. His mind is completely penetrated by the mind of the infinite light Buddha, by the Amida Buddha. His mind is completely penetrated So what remains? What remains, basically, the names and qualities of the Lord, the attributes of God. Krishna represents the highest rasa, the highest union in devotion with the same qualitative essence that one experiences, except in infinite quantity. Because the infinite quantity is all that is. The infinite quantity is the real. And it only appears to be limited, manifesting in this body, manifesting as this body. But that appearance of limitation is only again from the purview of the physical senses. In actuality, the soul is unlimited. The transcendentalist soul is free. And the transcendentalist soul knows not except the divine rapture of the ecstatic devotion exhibited by the great saints such as Sri Chaitanya, Bayezid al-Bistami, Satya Sai Baba, Ramakrishna, or any of the great saints. These great saints were not but living Shekinah, but living Shakti, living power of the Holy Spirit. They were not but that. They were Goloka. They are Goloka. There is no difference between Goloka Vrindavan and the heart of the purified saint or yogi, devotee, who has made themselves not but the Absolute. If I could read from Swami Tripurari's commentary on the Sri Gopala Tapani Upanishad. This is the verse from the Gopala Tapani Upanishad. He who from the very beginning of creation takes the living entities known as the Gopas as his very self is known as, or is verily Gopala. One should think the truth is identical with the sacred syllable Om. And I am he. I am he who is the supreme Brahman, the essence of whom is Krishna, whose only form is one of eternal bliss. That Gopala is the unobstructed supreme truth. Thinking, quote unquote, I am he. By the way, this is from the Upanishads themselves. Thinking, I am he, one should take care of the self. One should control the self and concentrate the mind. One should then meditate on the self, thinking, I am Gopala. Verily, Gopala is unmanifest, infinite, and eternal. The sacred syllable Om is your very life breath. So like it says, focusing the mind, concentrating the mind on the supreme truth, identical with the sacred syllable Om, which is manifesting as your very life force in the breath. Om. The A and the U are manifested as the inhaling and exhaling. And in Kumbhaka Yoga, where you reach the breathless state, the mind is expanded by the vital airs of the Om, manifested as the breathless state. The A and the U is the inhale and the exhale, and then the M is the breathless state. So all of these feeding into one another in the breathless state create the Supreme Brahman manifested. They unlock the key. In his commentary on this verse, Swami Tripurari Maharaj has said, Sri Prabodhananda says that in this verse, Narayana tells Brahma that the name Gopal means he who accepts the Gopas, or those who are entirely dependent on him for their existence as his very self, with unequaled affection as though non-different from him throughout all time. Accepts them as their very self, with unequaled affection, as though non-different from him throughout all time. He comments further on the spirit of Narayan's statement. Just as the cowherds are always by Gopala Krishna's side, in the spirit of oneness with him, so too do all living beings remain with him. All living beings remain with him as his loving devotees in potential. And the principal path for them chalked out here in Gopala Tapani is one that culminates in loving him in the oneness characterized by the cowherds of Braj. So this is why they love him so much. This is why they're able to feel such an extent of love for him, because it is their very essence, which is identical with his ocean of love. On this path, devotees progress from worshipping to actually being worship itself. Here's the key to understanding Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. On this path, devotees progress from worshipping to actually being worship. Not being worshipped, being worship itself, in the form of becoming the bhava, or spiritual emotion, that they cultivate. You become the bhava, or the spiritual ecstasy that you cultivate. This spiritual emotion for Krishna is non-different from him, inasmuch as Gopala Krishna is that face of Brahman that corresponds with the bhav of Braj Bhakti. That is, this spiritual plane's inhabitants, that this spiritual plane's inhabitants are constituted of. So Gopala Krishna, they're saying that the spiritual emotion for Krishna is non-different from him, inasmuch as Gopala Krishna is that face of Brahman that corresponds with the bhav of Braj Bhakti. That this spiritual plane's inhabitants are constituted of. The dynamic nature of Advaya Gyan Tattva, non-dual consciousness, that is experienced by the enlightened, is fully expressed as Goloka, Krishna's planet. The dynamic union of love between Gopala Krishna and his cowherds, who know Swayam Bhagavan Shri Krishna as their very own in a compact of love. They are so united with him that they know him as their beloved, as their very own. That is the fullness of remembering the nature of the self. Om Tat Sat. Nescience of matter, or something which is deep inherent and full of absolute reality. All religions, all spiritualists who created these religions and spiritualists and the mundaneist, mundaner. It's the difference between a religion which is based on something material and temporary and associated with the inertia and false. Who am I? The sense of self is everything when it comes to spiritual realization, or spiritual, rather material unrealization. It's the difference between the transcendentalists who evolved out of the people who created these religions, rely upon the connection between the self and the absolute. There is some kind of strange connection there between the self and the absolute. When we're born into this material,
Shakti Pod Seer 2.